Hello, everybody. I hope we're all doing well under quarantine. Today, I'm going to be doing exam number 5-1A, where I explain a phylogenetic tree. Now, a phylogenetic tree is basically what geneticists use to be able to explain evolution, evolutionary development, and the differentiation and taxonomy of species. And we have one right here, which I've just pulled up, where we have 8 different species over here: lamprey, perch, salamander, lizard, crocodile, pigeon, mouse, and chimpanzee. And we are going to go over what makes them different. Now, there are a couple of key terms that you want to consider. And I'm going to start by explaining them. Now, first, this phylogenetic tree is what is called a rooted tree, where all these all these all these species can be traced back to a common ancestor right here, as opposed to an unrooted tree where you don't necessarily have a common ancestor, and you can't determine and therefore you can't determine the order in which species have evolved. But here, rather, we have one common ancestor that branches off and gives us this incredibly diverse speciation, and we're able to see in a clear, distinct order what what um what order these species all evolved in. So this is actually an example of cladogenesis, where there's a common ancestor and evolution is divergent into two different groups, right? See, with here, for example, you get a lamprey and you get jawed animals. And here, for example, you get a salamander and you get animals with claws or nails. Now, in other examples, in a anagenistic tree, what would happen is it would actually only be along one line. And it's not more so an example of divergence in evolution, rather an example of continuation and um, further evolution without multiple species as a result. Now, geneticists will often refer to a term called OTU, and what that means is operational taxonomical unit. Now, that one might assume that to be a species, but it can actually be a reference to an entire line, this one, for example, or just a simple species, may even be just one simple common ancestor. But basically, it's a term that geneticists use to explain anything that they're speaking in reference to when looking at a phylogenetic tree like this. Um, Internal nodes are actually they're a fancy word for things like this, right? How lungs are a differentiating factor between a common ancestor with lines that lead to perch and lines that lead to lunged animals right here. Now, most common recent ancestor, you can see that the mouse and the chimpanzee have much shorter lines, which indicate that they have a more recent common ancestor than the lizard and gizzarded animals. Um, what this means is that a mouse and a chimpanzee have a more recent common ancestor. Their species diverged later than lizards and crocodiles and pigeons, for example. Um, And this lamprey right here, what we can do is that it actually has the earliest common ancestor of all these animals. So we can reference that as the outgroup. Now, what that means is that it is the most divergent out of all these animals, and it has the least common ancestors of any of these. So that's why we call it the outgroup, because it is apart from all other species that show up in this tree. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you're having a great day and stay safe.